Okay, we all know why you're here, unless you're dyslexic, meaning you didn't read the title, and if you are dyslexic, then have fun reading this. Actually, most of that wasn't relevant to the video topic anyway, I think you dyslexics will be fine. In order to not sound like a broken record, like 95% of the videos this community has made on this subject, I'll just jump straight into the rules, guidelines, etc. My predictions will be using a 12-cut format, 6 nitros and 6 retros. Why? Because 32 tracks at launch would look lame as hell. This is likely going to be a launch title for the Switch too, so Nintendo needs to convince fans that this game can at least hold its own weight when standing alongside 8 Deluxe. The way the cups will be structured difficulty-wise is that Shell, Banana, and Leaf will be relatively normal, with the 2 new cups being only ever so slightly harder than Leaf, and then Lightning as usual being the most extreme. I'll also be trying to keep the track counts from each game relatively the same, with the exception of 8, which has never had any of its tracks return. However, tracks featured in the Booster Course Pass, with the exception of the Tour Nitros, are banned from the predictions. Although I wouldn't be surprised if we did end up getting one of the extremely iconic tracks like Coconut Mall or Waluigi Pinball. One last thing, most people don't really tend to think about this with their predictions, but I'll be trying to add tracks which have potential to be easily improved in the next game. They did this in the original Mario Kart 8 plenty, with tracks like DS Wario Stadium and N64 Yoshi Valley, making me hopeful they'll do the same here. If I do have any ideas for changes to tracks I predict, I will mention it, but unless stated otherwise, the bonus ideas I throw on for some tracks are merely dream scenarios more than anything. Although the general idea of X track could be very improved upon will be kept in mind for most of the tracks I end up going with. Other rules or anything of the sorts will be brought up as we go along, but I think we're all tired of this intro already, so let's just zoom right onto the first cup. Starting off with the first Shell Cup track, and oddly enough, this slot has been one of the ones where I've seen quite a bit of debate, more specifically around the idea of DS Figure 8 Circuit making a comeback, and I'm just going to say it now, no. I've heard plenty suggest that Figure 8 Circuit has tons of potential for if it were remade. We like gliders, underwater, anti-gravity. Unfortunately, I don't think any of those ideas would work in the slightest, and I think Nintendo is also smart enough to realize that too. You see, the problem with Figure 8 Circuit has less to do with the way the track was executed, and more with the core concept itself. You know, the idea that it's an empty road shaped like an 8. So if it were to be remade, it would likely keep the boring 8 shape, meaning we'd still have all those long empty roads, and I don't think adding a simple glider would change much in that regard. I've also heard many people say that Nintendo should use the Smash Bros. One, but I'm sorry to ruin it for you all, that shit is more barren and a wasteland. So in short, no Figure 8 Circuit please. Instead, how about Nintendo remake Wii Mario Circuit? Even if it was a Flower Cup track on Wii, the core layout itself is still extremely simple, meaning it probably fits Shell quite well. Plus you got all that Wii nostalgia backing it up too, which may be the final push Nintendo needs to add it to the game. One more thing though. In the sneak peek we were shown of Mario Kart 9, there seemed to be a hint that the lap changing gimmick from Tour was returning, and since it's on the game's presumed to be new Mario Circuit track, I'm hoping that the lap changing will be used more prominently in the next game. My idea is that maybe every first and last track of the cup could have it, with Wii Mario Circuit having a prime example for how you could use it. Just let people go over to the castle. After all, there's practically already an area begging to be used to take you there. Although considering that this is an addition to Wii Mario Circuit, I don't think you'd be able to do much complex over there, so I'm sorry to all the people who wanted to go to Bob on Battlefield as Baby Daisy, I don't think it's happening, bud. In terms of any future lap changing shenanigans that I think of, I'll mention them for the suitable tracks as we go along, but my predictions are also made to be fitting even if the lap changing idea is off the table. Second up is N64 Koopa Troopa Beach. Considering that Mario Kart 7 released basically 13 years ago at this point, I could see quite a few Mario Kart 7 retros getting third chances, and this is probably the one I'm most confident on. Koopa Troopa Beach would be one of the tracks most benefited by a proper visual glow-up, which is all it really needs to be perfected since it's seemingly one of the more popular N64 tracks. SNES Choco Island 2, whilst being mediocre as hell in every previous incarnation, could benefit wonderfully from a remake, with less obnoxious slippery controls, maybe more to do in that mud section, and some much needed visual diversity. Like seriously, this course looks putrid. What the fuck is that texture? I could see Choco Island 2 being at least a moderately fun if it were to return. Finally, we're ending the Shell Cup with DS Luigi's Mansion. The past 2 Shell Cups have ended with some very popular choices, and I feel like it makes sense to do so here as well. Luigi's Mansion with some more dramatic lighting could easily help nail the vibe the track was trying to go for originally. Plus, the mud section would be perfect for 24 players. Luigi's Mansion could also heavily benefit from lap changing, maybe having you turn to the left in that long corridor with a new section based on some different iconic locales from the original game. Opening the Banana Cup is 3DS Shy Guy Bazaar, certainly one of the most unique Mushroom Cup courses. After being cut from the Wii U version of Mario Kart 8 and then also not being included in the BCP despite how popular it is, I feel like Shy Guy Bazaar is way too overdue to make an appearance, and I don't think many will fight me on that take. Maybe even include a new route up this flight of stairs. I don't know, I'm just shooting ideas at a wall here. Mario Kart 9's retro selection is bound to have an ice track, and as much as I personally want DK Pass, I feel like Nintendo will go with Vanilla Lake. More specifically, Vanilla Lake 1. The chaos of having 24 players trying to break down that wall of ice blocks was already appealing enough to me, but add on how Nintendo would probably give it a massive visual glow up, and to me it seems like a must have. Maybe adding those igloos from RMX Vanilla Lake 2 would work well, although we might have a word about the interior and exterior design of these igloos. Having no door doesn't seem very safe or efficient. How much do you think those penguins paid for this place? Out of the easier tracks in 8, Sweet Sweet Canyon feels like by far the most likely. Even if most more experienced players don't find too much entertainment out of this relatively simple romp, I've come to realize that many extremely casual players consider this to be one of their favorites, mostly due to aesthetics. With that in mind, I think it'd be weird if Sweet Sweet Canyon wasn't a priority retro. Ending off the cup is GCN Mushroom City. Do I even need to explain why? It's one of the very few Double Dash tracks remaining to be remade, one of the very few city-based maps remaining to be remade, and is one of the more highly requested ones by many to get a remake. Bringing in lap-changing shenanigans to this as well is simple. Just let you visit any of those other streets and buildings that used to send you out of bounds on Double Dash. If this weren't to get added, there would be riots. I wouldn't be attending though. Mainly because I don't really want Mushroom City to come back. Mushroom City, if it were to return, would likely get dumbed down a ton in a similar fashion to Moonview Highway and Toad's Turnpike, due to the new game's traffic seemingly being just as spread out, small and slow as 8's. This is also why I have it in Cup 2 out of 6. The track's easier difficulty is bound to have it placed a few cups further back than it would have been placed otherwise, much to my dismay. Is anyone even the teensiest bit surprised that I'm putting in bootleg Mario Circuit 4? Mario Circuit 4. Nintendo seems to have a strange addiction to adding SNES Mario Circuit in every game. Like, my lord, Tor has 4 of them. And considering that this is the only one not remade yet, I think it's a pretty easy lock for this game. However, considering how long they gatekept SNES Mario Circuit 4, I think most people would have higher expectations of its remake. So here's my idea. How about they base it off Mount Mustache? That level was already based off SNES Mario Circuit 4 after all, and adding some of the gameplay elements like the jump pads, mushroom trampolines, and slides would be a really cool way to spice up MC4. Guess I don't need to explain the lap changing thing much for this one either. I'm sure from what I said previously, it should be pretty self-explanatory. Also, the idiot who got me the 3D World footage took damage, guys. Everybody laugh. Super Bell Subway is my second choice from 8. If we were to get any of the 4 DLC nitros that are actually realistic to happen, I feel like Super Bell Subway is the one with by far the least competition, alongside it certainly being the most popular. I imagine that due to us having 24 players now, they'd also maybe put more trains on the tracks, and as long as the trains still remain threatening, that could be a really cool way to mix up this rendition of Super Bell Subway. 3DS Wario Shipyard not making it into either the BCP or Base 8, like Shy Guy Bazaar, still remains a crime. Also, don't worry, this isn't the only Wario track I'm including. Not only does this help add a track to our very shallow set of underwater-based tracks, it also has a very unique feel compared to most tracks so far with how abandoned the area looks. The boat section is also just begging to become an anti-gravity section, which makes me still wonder, how the fuck did this not get into Base 8? If Toad's Factory is the boy band, then Mario Kart fans are the e-girls who flock them. Toad's Factory is half the personality of this community. Surely Nintendo has to be aware of that, right? The only other thing I'll note about this track is that I think it's going to get a similar treatment to Calamari Desert in 7, where it's going to be placed a few cups further forward than expected. Toad's Factory is similar to Ninja Hideaway for me, where despite the track's minimap being basically just a square, the contents of the track itself proved to be challenging enough to where I'd say it doesn't fit its Mushroom Cup label, at least compared to other stereotypically easy tracks. Which is why I personally believe that in a 6-cup format, being the finale of the 3rd cup fits Toad's Factory to a T. Sunshine Airport, when the original Mario Kart 8 released, was considered a smash hit by many, making its return feel inevitable. Lap changing also feels perfect for Sunshine Airport, considering all the unused runaways and the fact that the original track barely even touches the inside of the airport. Super Circuit has many interesting choices to go with. However, considering that Tour Room, the one I was previously most interested in, Broken Pier is now the one I've got the biggest eye on. Most custom tracks that aim to remake Broken Pier usually tend to add underwater sections Mountains as their big new addition, but Boo Lake already beat Boy compared to that. Instead, what if Nintendo keeps the lack of water, and has you exploring those spooky mountains that are usually kept to the background, whilst going across the rickety bridges? Maybe you could even go inside the mountains.
Vor?
Go away, NX. N64 Cage Jungle Parkway is another one which could be great with a reimagining. I already liked the course before, but with a bit more visual variety outside of just jungle and a music which isn't just a 10-second drum loop, I could see this one being the best version by miles. When looking through the vast selection of tour nitros to choose from, excluding the obvious, I'm sure most people wouldn't land on Sky High Sunday. To me though, Sky High Sunday seems like a no-brainer. Considering that every tour track, excluding the obvious, have all appeared in 2 games each already, that means we've already played them a ton recently. I think choosing the tour track which has the most room for potential improvements makes the most sense, and it's not like Sky High Sunday is irredeemable. After all, the theming is fantastic, all it really needs is a more engaging layout, and Nintendo has no shame when it comes to changing track layout, so I don't see why they couldn't just slightly alter the layout here. Or they could do some lap changing stuff so that the core layout still stays intact, just saying. I'm sure that this one will be controversial, but I think Sky High Sunday coming back as a retro could be extremely interesting in a game where it can finally be refined enough to truly shine, and I doubt that Nintendo have any sort of hatred towards Sky High Sunday where they couldn't at least be intrigued themselves. Opening the Cherry Cup is GBA Lakeside Park. It got remade in Tour near the end of the game's life cycle, and whilst it was actually pretty good in Tour, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Mario Kart 9 took an entirely different approach to it. For example, it could have you going inside the volcano, or you could just have lap changing mix the volcano idea and the Tour version together. That works too. Wii Dry Dry Ruins, being the only Wii course remade in Tour not added to the BCP, should be considered a federal offense, and I do consider it a federal offense. My goat got replaced by an ice glacier, and whatever the fuck a Daisy circuit is. It's been over a year and the trauma still haunts me. Nintendo also has massive Wii bias, so I don't think it's too far-fetched to suspect that the only worldwide liked desert track could be in the next game. Electrodrome is probably the first track I think of when I think Mario Kart 8. That's basically my entire reason for putting it in here, to be honest. Its popularity outshines many of the other choices from it. Ending off the cup is 3DS Makawoohoo. I'm not too keen on including it in here due to Nintendo seemingly trying to move away from the Wii's influence with the emphasis on Mii's and such. However, 2017 saw the reintroduction of 3DS Woohoo Town in 8 Deluxe, so I don't think Makawoohoo is entirely off the table. It would also be the perfect way to send players off to the final cup with how grand it is, and in terms of lap changing, that is a mystery which will never be solved. Onto the final cup, and this is the one that's been set in stone for the longest. With that said, it's time to finally answer the question of N64 Wario Stadium or GCN Wario Coliseum. We will not be mounting Wario. And if you were to ask me, I don't think they'd go with Wario Stadium. I feel like there was a reason that Nintendo didn't remake Stadium in 8, and instead went with the DS one. It's empty and overly long, alongside its theming feeling kind of redundant when other Stadium tracks are already more visually interesting. Case in point, Wario Coliseum is that more interesting stadium. I feel like they go with Coliseum in 9 since it's more highly requested, and with the addition of anti-gravity, I could see the remake being far more twisty and crazy than even the original. Maybe even with lap changing, you could go deeper into the arena, where it could perhaps be even more dangerous with tons of fire and spikes everywhere. Regardless, I think most would agree that even if you don't think Wario Coliseum is getting an over stadium, it at least be much cooler. Piranha Plant Pipeline is the only track from Tour not added to 8, easy addition. I don't get why people usually place Pipeline so early on though. With the large variety of hazards and the peculiar cylindrical shape of basically the entire map, I think it 100% belongs in one of the late game cups. I also think it'd be neat if they set the track during a thunderstorm to match the music better, but mainly just because I think it'd look cool. Choosing the Bowser's Castle basically feels like a lottery, but I think I'll bet my chips on DS. DS Bowser Castle has tons of very unique elements to it, like the spinning cylinder, rotating floors, and moving platforms at the end. It would certainly help it stand out from whatever the Nitro Bowser's Castle is, and it could help people remember and appreciate a pretty forgotten but very good track. Ending off the game will obviously be a Rainbow Road, but which one? Most people seem to be going with GBA because of some chronological order theory. I don't think that's what chronological means. But I don't think I really see the vision. With a GBA Rainbow Road remake having a very high chance of removing its defining gimmick, I'm not sure if Nintendo, at least with the base game, would want to risk upsetting fans to that degree. That'd be especially the case considering how much backlash they got for some of their last few GBA remakes. I think Nintendo has another option though. In Mario Kart 7, Nintendo remade their first Rainbow Road, being the SNES one. It was a bold move, considering how hated most SNES tracks are, but with the new additions such as the Rippling Road to help modernize it, it actually ended up being quite successful. N64 Rainbow Road is the same. It's a track that was infamous for being overly long and boring. However, they went with it anyway and fixed the fundamental problems for most people. My point is that in the past two games where the retros were actually given a chance to properly shine, Nintendo prioritized the Rainbow Roads which had some of the highest potential to be improved. This is why I'm going with Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road as the finale of the game. I mean seriously, what are people's issues with the track? It doesn't feel magical or rainbow enough? With as cartoony as an art style as this, I doubt that Nintendo wouldn't make the rainbow more vibrant. The anti-grav felt underwhelming? Well, it probably can't be that hard to just curve turns a little more to make the anti-grav a bit crazier. And come on, if Nintendo is going to put the lap-changing gimmick on their presumed to be Mario Circuit, then I have no doubt that it at least be on its retro Rainbow Road, allowing for the course to try so many more ideas it previously couldn't. Whether it be leaning more into the space station side of it, or the new routes being something entirely new. It certainly contrasts from whatever the Nitro Rainbow Road, which I imagine would be aiming to try something more similar to past Rainbow Roads with the emotional atmosphere and such, considering how controversial 8's ended up being. To be fair, just like the Bowser's Castles, predicting the Rainbow Road is pretty much just up to random chance. But no matter the case, I still have a feeling that out of every Rainbow Road, the one to end off the game will be the Mario Kart 8 one. Anyways, here's all the cups for everyone who skipped to the end of the video without actually watching it. Making these predictions was actually quite fun, so I might do more stuff like this in the future. But now it's your turn. What did you think of my predictions? Were they good or were they horrid? Let me know down below. I love reading your comments on what you guys have to say. Anyways, bye.